In the wake of last year's catastrophic eruptions of Mount Taranaki and Mount Ruapehu, sweeping safety measures have been implemented across New Zealand to prepare for future volcanic threats. Towns within 30 kilometers of active or dormant volcanoes now feature newly constructed underground shelters, capable of housing thousands in emergencies. Additionally, designated airlift zones and evacuation highways have been established, with several new routes under construction to ensure faster access to safety. Officials report that these measures are part of a $2.8 billion nationwide initiative aimed at mitigating the devastating impacts of volcanic activity. Tourism in volcanic regions has seen a sharp decline, with visitor numbers dropping by nearly 40% compared to pre-eruption levels. Popular destinations such as Tongariro National Park and the Taranaki region have experienced significant economic setbacks as travelers avoid high-risk areas. Local businesses have called for government support to offset these losses, while civil defense emphasizes the importance of prioritizing public safety over tourism recovery. Meanwhile, scientists at GeoNet continue to monitor seismic activity closely, warning that further unrest remains a possibility. In response to the heightened risk, public awareness campaigns have intensified, urging residents to prepare emergency kits and familiarize themselves with evacuation protocols. Recent surveys indicate that 72% of households in high-risk areas now have emergency plans in place, a dramatic increase from just 45% last year. While these efforts mark significant progress, experts caution that no amount of preparation can fully eliminate the dangers posed by New Zealand's volatile geological landscape. Back to you in the studio.
At approximately 10:46 a.m. local time, seismic monitoring stations registered a major submarine volcanic eruption occurring 20 kilometers west of Norfolk Island, with an estimated VEI of 6.3, placing it significantly above the 2022 Hunga Tonga event in intensity. The eruption produced a vertical ash plume exceeding 44 kilometers in height and generated an atmospheric shockwave recorded by barometers across the Pacific Rim, including stations in Indonesia, Chile, and Peru. Initial satellite data and thermal imaging confirm rapid caldera collapse and pyroclastic surges beneath the ocean surface, with preliminary estimates suggesting energy output equivalent to 190 megatons of TNT. Further analysis is underway, but the scale and force of this event pose a high probability of regional tsunami generation. Monitoring agencies have been notified.
This is 9 News, and we're breaking in with urgent news from Norfolk Island, where a catastrophic volcanic eruption has rocked the region. Eyewitness footage from a container ship just off the island shows a massive plume of ash and debris rising into the sky, with many on the island reporting a sudden and intense shaking, as well as volcanic rain and falling ash. Local authorities have confirmed that there are at least 15 reported injuries, including tourists and residents, with ongoing evacuations underway as authorities fear the eruption could intensify. Flights to and from Norfolk Island have been grounded, with several inbound international flights being rerouted to Brisbane and Sydney. Meanwhile, several cargo ships in the area have been forced to anchor.
This is an emergency tsunami warning issued by the Australian Bureau of Meteorology, the National Emergency Management Agency, and local broadcast networks, following a volcanic eruption off Norfolk Island at approximately 11 a.m. local time. Authorities have confirmed that the eruption, which occurred about 20 kilometers from Norfolk Island, has triggered a significant tsunami event, sending waves toward the eastern coastline. This warning is being aired across major networks, including ABC, Channel 9, and regional emergency stations, as the situation continues to develop. The eruption has caused widespread damage and raised the threat of large tsunami waves impacting coastal areas. Current tsunami projections indicate that waves between 10 and 15 meters in height are expected to reach Norfolk Island within the next 10 minutes. Coastal areas of eastern Australia are expected to feel the effects of the tsunami within the next 1 to 2 hours, though the severity of the waves will diminish as they approach the mainland. Norfolk Island will face the full force of the tsunami around 11:45 a.m., while waves are expected to reach the eastern coastline of Australia between 12:30 p.m. and 1 p.m. Authorities are advising those in high-risk areas to seek shelter on elevated ground immediately. Cities along the eastern coastline expected to experience impacts include Brisbane, Gold Coast, Byron Bay, Coffs Harbour, Port Macquarie, Newcastle, Sydney, Wollongong, Batemans Bay, and Merimbula. These areas are likely to see wave heights ranging from 1 to 3 meters, with the most significant effects anticipated for Sydney and Newcastle. More distant regions including the far northern parts of Queensland, such as Cairns and Townsville, may also see small waves and minor flooding. Authorities in these regions are closely monitoring the situation, and though major flooding is not expected, local advisories may be issued if conditions worsen. Residents of Norfolk Island are urged to move to the highest ground available immediately, avoiding low-lying areas, beaches, and harbours. On the east coast of Australia, while the threat is less severe, those in low-lying coastal areas, particularly in Sydney, Newcastle, and the northern New South Wales coast, should prepare to evacuate to higher ground should conditions change. Do not waste time packing belongings, focus on safety and evacuation. Remain away from the coastline until further notice. In response to the disaster, all non-essential businesses along the east coast of Australia have been instructed to close, and recovery efforts are already underway for Norfolk Island. Rescue teams have been dispatched, and local authorities are focused on assessing the damage and providing assistance where needed. Residents are asked to remain patient and stay tuned for further updates from emergency management teams. It is important to avoid the temptation to return to affected areas until they are declared safe by authorities. While East Australia is unlikely to see major impacts, Norfolk Island and nearby areas are at immediate risk. Authorities will continue to monitor the situation and provide additional updates as more information becomes available. Stay safe and remain alert.
Alright, so the island size is still increasing. We've got a new landmass emerging, and it's about 1 kilometer wide now. How are the ash clouds looking today?
They're reaching parts of Northland. Ash has been spotted over Whangarei, and we've had to issue airspace restrictions. Flights have been diverted to avoid the area. It's starting to get serious.
The tremors haven't let up either. The eruption's activity continues to intensify, and we've got significant seismic readings from the surrounding region. I think we need to start thinking long-term about how this could affect other areas. Yeah, but here's the thing. I've been looking into the underwater volcanic system connected to this event. It's not just one isolated volcano. There's a massive rift running along the Kermadec Trench, an entire series of submarine volcanoes.
Wait, hold on. You're saying this eruption's linked to that whole system? But those volcanoes are spread out across the trench. How could one eruption suddenly trigger all of them?
Exactly. And here's the kicker. I've confirmed that the entire rift system is active right now. Each of these underwater volcanoes along the trench could form landmasses the size of New Caledonia. It's all connected.
Wait, so you're telling me that this single eruption could be the tip of the iceberg? That we might be looking at a series of massive new islands forming in the next few decades?
That's right. This eruption's just the first phase, and it's likely that more volcanic islands will emerge from this rift. It could reshape the entire region. This is far bigger than we initially thought.
But each of these volcanoes could completely change the geography. We're not just talking about small islands. We could see landmasses appearing in the middle of the Pacific. This could trigger massive changes for surrounding ecosystems and even the climate.
It's hard to wrap my head around, honestly. A new landmass the size of New Caledonia could change international shipping routes, not to mention the geopolitical impact. We'll need to coordinate with other agencies. This is huge.
The newly formed volcanic island off the coast of Norfolk Island continues to erupt, now measuring approximately a kilometer in width. Ash clouds from the eruption have reached parts of Northland in New Zealand, leading to airspace closures and flight diversions in the area. Geologists are closely monitoring the situation as they begin to examine the island and the volcanic activity from the ground and air. In a surprising development, scientists have discovered that the eruption is connected to an underwater volcanic rift along the Pacific Plate boundary. The rift, which stretches across the Comatic Trench, could potentially lead to the formation of more landmasses in the region. This discovery has raised concerns about the long-term impacts of the eruption, with the possibility of additional islands emerging in the coming years.
This is an emergency alert issued for Christchurch and surrounding regions following a magnitude 6.5 earthquake earlier today. The earthquake struck at approximately 2:30 p.m. New Zealand Standard Time, prompting immediate response efforts and safety advisories. Please stay tuned for further updates and instructions from civil defense authorities. The earthquake was centered approximately 15 kilometers southeast of Christchurch at a depth of 10 kilometers, causing widespread shaking across the Canterbury region. Significant damage has been reported in several areas, including the central business district and suburbs such as Ruffin and Addington. Key buildings like the Christchurch Town Hall and several heritage structures have sustained visible cracks and structural instability. Emergency crews are assessing damage to residential properties, with initial reports indicating moderate liquefaction in low-lying areas. Fires have broken out in several locations due to ruptured gas lines, with major incidents reported on Colombo Street and Mouse Avenue. Access to these areas is currently restricted as emergency services work to contain the blazes. Christchurch International Airport has temporarily suspended operations due to structural assessments of runways and terminals. Public transport services, including bus routes and train lines, have been halted until further notice due to debris obstructing key roads and railways. A tsunami alert was issued immediately following the earthquake, with wave heights initially estimated at up to 4 meters along coastal areas. Residents in Sumner, New Brighton, and Littleton were advised to evacuate to higher ground as a precautionary measure. Fortunately, updated data from the National Institute of Water and Atmospheric Research in Service indicates that wave activity has subsided, with no significant flooding reported so far. Authorities are continuing to monitor coastal conditions closely. Power outages have been reported in eastern suburbs such as Linwood and Bromley, affecting approximately 12,000 households. Landslides have occurred along the Port Hills, blocking several roads and posing additional risks to nearby communities. Civil defense teams are actively coordinating rescue operations for individuals trapped in damaged buildings or inaccessible areas. Emergency shelters have been set up at Hadley Park and Pioneer Stadium for displaced residents. This concludes this emergency alert system broadcast for Christchurch and surrounding regions. Residents are urged to remain vigilant and follow instructions from local authorities as aftershocks may occur over the coming hours. For updates on road closures, power restoration efforts, or emergency assistance, please contact Civil Defence or tune into RNZ National for live coverage.
Good afternoon. We bring you breaking news as Christchurch is reeling from a magnitude 6.5 earthquake that struck at 2:30 p.m. today, causing widespread damage across the city and surrounding areas. GeoNet has confirmed the quake's epicenter was located 15 kilometers southeast of the city at a shallow depth of 10 kilometers, intensifying its impact. This marks the most significant seismic event in the region since the devastating Canterbury earthquakes over a decade ago. The quake caused partial collapses in several older structures, including a heritage building on Worcester Street and parts of the Historic Arts Centre. Emergency services have cordoned off sections of the CBD after reports of falling masonry and shattered glass along Colombo Street. Tragically, one fatality has been confirmed, a local resident struck by debris near Cashel Mall, and dozens more have sustained injuries ranging from minor cuts to severe trauma. Post-quake fires have broken out in 3 locations due to ruptured gas lines, with major incidents reported on Fitzgerald Avenue and Charm Street. Fire crews are working urgently to contain the blazes, while ensuring safety in areas where access remains restricted. Christchurch International Airport has suspended operations pending structural assessments, and public transport services across the city are offline due to debris obstructing key routes. A tsunami alert was issued shortly after the earthquake, with wave heights initially predicted to reach up to 4 meters along coastal areas such as Sumner and New Brighton. However, updated modelling suggests minimal flooding risk, and residents who evacuated earlier have been advised they can return home cautiously. Civil Defence continues to monitor coastal conditions in case of aftershocks triggering further risks. For further information on road closures, emergency services availability, or safety instructions, stay tuned to RNZ National or visit Civil Defence's website. Our thoughts are with those affected during this challenging time.
All right. The latest seismic data from the Banks Peninsula shows a sharp increase in ground deformation over the past 48 hours. GNSS stations are reporting uplift rates of nearly 15 millimeters per day, far above the normal baseline.
That aligns with our thermal imaging data. We're detecting significant heat anomalies near the Akaroa volcanic system, suggesting magma movement at shallow depths. This is consistent with the patterns we observed before Ruapehu's eruption last year.
And it's not just the Banks Peninsula. The Taupo volcanic zone is showing elevated seismicity as well. Over 120 tremors have been recorded in the past week, with several exceeding magnitude 4.5 near Tarawera and Okataina.
Yes, and don't forget Auckland. The volcanic field there has seen a spike in microseismic activity, over 40 events in the last 3 days alone. While small, these quakes are clustered around dormant vents like Rangito, which is concerning.
Given this data, we need to consider recommending partial evacuations for Christchurch immediately. If magma continues to rise beneath the Banks Peninsula, we could be looking at a VEI 4 eruption or higher. The potential for pyroclastic flows and widespread ashfall is too great to ignore.
I agree, but we also need to factor in the interconnected nature of these systems. If Taupo or Auckland were to erupt simultaneously, it would overwhelm civil defense resources. We need a coordinated national response plan before this escalates further.
Understood. I'll prepare a briefing for tomorrow's government meeting outlining these risks. We'll need to emphasize that this isn't isolated. These events are part of a larger tectonic shift likely tied to an ongoing geological uplift the likes of which never seen before.
Let's also include projections for worst-case scenarios, ash dispersal models for Auckland and Christchurch, tsunami risks if coastal vents become active, and potential evacuation timelines. We'll need NEMA on board immediately to coordinate logistics.
For now, let's issue an internal advisory for enhanced monitoring across all volcanic zones and notify local civil defense teams in Christchurch and Auckland to prepare evacuation protocols. Time isn't on our side with this one.
Let's get straight to the point. I want to know exactly what we're dealing with and whether evacuation planning needs to begin today. No politics, just facts.
The facts are that we are looking at signs of a large-scale geological reconfiguration. The last 72 hours of seismic data from Banks Peninsula, Auckland, Taupo, and even the far south show interconnected activity, uplift, swarms, and gas emissions across multiple dormant systems.
This isn't isolated. When we compare the current deformation patterns to historical models dating back to 1950, we see a repeating trend. This exact sequence preceded the 2027 eruptions of Taranaki and Ruapehu. And now it's accelerating, not stabilizing.
We've had eruptions before. What makes this different? Are we talking about another regional eruption, or something more widespread?
It's far beyond regional. We've traced the fault lines, thermal anomalies, and crustal stress points forming a rough boundary, almost identical to the shape of the submerged Zealandia continent. We believe Zealandia is beginning to rise.
Zealandia? You mean that underwater landmass we've only seen on geological maps? Are you saying that it's physically surfacing? Precisely. The pressure building underneath the plate boundary between the Australian and Pacific plates has reached critical levels. If this event continues, Zealandia's formation may complete in a matter of weeks, likely involving multiple high-magnitude earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. How much time do we have before this becomes life-threatening to the public? What are we projecting?
Based on current rates, anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks before a VEI 5 or greater eruption. The Taupo zone alone could displace over 500,000 people with ashfall and pyroclastic flows. And if a coastal vent opens, tsunami warnings become inevitable. This is without considering the numerous eruptions and earthquakes that will likely devastate the area beyond recognition first.
This is unprecedented. We'll need to escalate to a national state of emergency and begin preparing urban evacuation protocols, especially for Christchurch and Auckland. We can't afford delays.
Draft the declaration. We meet with the Cabinet and Defence tonight. I want full public disclosure ready by 6 a.m. tomorrow.
You're listening to Coast FM on 90.1, broadcasting live across the Wellington region. Our midday update focuses on escalating developments around Parliament and New Zealand's national security. Footage this morning captured multiple high-ranking officials exiting the beehive in haste, with no public statement from the Prime Minister in over 48 hours. The Defence Force had not confirmed the purpose of current movements, but multiple Hercules and Orion aircraft were seen departing from Waikiki and Wenua bases throughout the night. Additionally, convoys of NZDF personnel have been tracked moving through southern regions and into key civil infrastructure zones. These deployments come amid increasing online speculation of classified evacuation and sheltering operations being executed under emergency protocol. Reports are also emerging of whistleblowers, many from GMS Science and Civil Defence, going silent after releasing unverified claims regarding a geological cataclysm. Several known individuals who had posted warnings on encrypted social media networks have since disappeared or ceased all digital communication. While authorities have not addressed these disappearances, public concern continues to grow across online forums and community groups. In the wider South Pacific, military activity is reportedly mirroring New Zealand's posture. Australia has increased coastal surveillance along its eastern seaboard, while sources indicate that bunkers and fortified shelters are being established in parts of Fiji and Tonga. These preparations, while unofficial, suggest a coordinated effort among Southern Hemisphere governments to prepare for a worst-case scenario. Coast FM will continue monitoring the situation with updates every hour on the half-hour mark. Stay tuned to 90.1 FM and follow our emergency frequency on 105.6 AM for any civil defence announcements or shelter advisories.
Hello, no one is available to take your call. Please leave a message after the tone. This is an automated message from the Office of the Governor-General, Wellington. The following communication is classified under Section 38 of the National Resilience and Continuity Act 2026. You are receiving this message as a registered individual listed under Category 4B, Infrastructure, Medical, or Strategic Civilian Roles. You have been selected for relocation. You are instructed to make preparations for coordinated relocation within the next 96 hours. Please ensure your immediate family members or dependents are briefed and prepared for a possible 30-day minimum relocation period. Only pack one suitcase per individual. You will be contacted again within 12 hours for a final confirmation notice. Encrypted coordinates for your assigned civil emergency shelter are as follows. Latitude -17.7304, longitude -149.4068, Tefesi Operations Zone, Vavau Island Chain, Tonga. Backup location is available at latitude -18.1423, longitude 178.4316, Western Shelter Complex, Coral Coast, Fiji. Both notification from continued assistance under the Civil Protection Protocol. To confirm receipt of this message, respond via the encrypted government email you have previously registered. You will be given a number to call which will route you to your local Defence Force airbase. This message will now terminate.
This is a live regional emergency broadcast issued by the Auckland Council and the Regional Emergency Management Agency at 12:20 p.m. local time. A catastrophic seismic event is actively occurring across Auckland and the surrounding regions. At 12:13 p.m., a magnitude 9.8 earthquake struck the Auckland region with the epicenter located near Pukeko. The earthquake is shallow, registering a depth of just 8.2 kilometers, and has been traced along the Karapihi fault system in the Hauraki Rift Zone. Tremors are cascading northward at terrifying velocity, traveling along connected fault lines and entering the Auckland metropolitan area with peak surface waves approaching magnitude 10.0. The violent shaking has persisted for over 10 minutes and continues to intensify. Massive surface ruptures and rift formations are now appearing across the Auckland Isthmus. A continuous fault air exceeding 25 kilometers has ripped through central Auckland from Onehunga to Northcote, with entire blocks swallowed into the earth. Additional rifts have opened in Mungiri, Manukau, Epsom, the North Shore, Waitakere, and Henderson. Eyewitness reports confirm roads, buildings, and suburbs collapsing into newly formed canyons over 80 meters deep. Simultaneously, extreme and rapid vertical uplift has been recorded around the city's coastal suburbs. Areas including Point Chevalier, Mission Bay, St Heliers, and Greyland are being pushed upwards at rates nearing 400 meters per minute. The uplift has torn through roads, utilities, and infrastructure, rendering evacuation routes unusable. Satellite and drone feeds showed jagged, mountainous terrain forming within minutes across East Auckland, particularly in Botany, Ardmore, and Pakuranga. Multiple tsunami events have been reported. Waves exceeding 100 meters in height have impacted the Waitemata Harbour, Hauraki Gulf, and Manukau Harbour. Coastal areas such as Whangapareoa, Huia, Laneholm, Titirangi, and Devonport are confirmed to be underwater. Secondary tsunami waves are forming as new ground ruptures split open the seabed in both the harbours and push land masses upward, forcing violent displacement of ocean water. Volcanic unrest has now been detected at 17 known volcanic features across the Auckland volcanic field. Elevated gas emissions, tremor swarms, and ground deformation have been recorded at Rangitoto Island, Mount Eden, Mount Wellington, Lake Pupuk, Orakei Basin, and Mount Albert. Geologists confirm magma movement is accelerating, and explosive eruptions are likely in the coming hours or even minutes. Auckland residents are urged to evacuate if safer routes remain accessible, though current conditions suggest most roads are impassable. New fault ruptures are now forming near volcanic cones. One has opened across the western base of Mount Eden. Another rupture is growing beneath Orakei Basin, and black smoke has been sighted from Mount Wellington.
We are coming to you live from Auckland, where a massive and still ongoing seismic event has transformed the city into a landscape of destruction. New rift lines have now torn through the southern motorway and northern busway corridors, splitting motorways in half and swallowing traffic en masse. Updated tsunami modeling from GNS Science confirms wave heights reaching up to 180 meters, with impact zones now confirmed as far inland as Newmarket, Takapuna, and Pukekohe. Ground uplift continues to defy expectations, with satellite telemetry showing parts of Auckland's eastern suburbs now over 400 meters above sea level. Simultaneously,
Fresh fissures have opened near the Auckland domain and are expanding rapidly toward the city centre. This studio is now within 300 metres of one. We are receiving unconfirmed reports of steam vents forming near Mount Roskill and Mount Hobson and ash being seen from Rangitoto Island. Wait, we are getting movement in the studio. The floor is...
Please stand by. At 12:13 p.m. New Zealand Daylight Time, a catastrophic magnitude 9.8 earthquake struck the Auckland region, centered near Puka along the Crepper Fault. Massive tectonic displacement has triggered negative tsunami activity across the Arapi Gulf, Firth Thames, and eastern coastlines of the Coromandel Peninsula. All coastal communities in the Greater Thames Coromandel District are now under extreme tsunami warning. Tsunami wave heights expected for the Firth of Thames and adjacent inlets are between 50 to 80 meters. Estimated time of arrival for these waves is on and at 10 minutes from now. For the eastern coast of the peninsula, Funkapa to Fungamatau waves ranging from 20 to 40 meters are projected to strike within 15 to 20 minutes. Total inundation is expected across all low-lying and coastal areas including Thames, Waitakere, Kreda, Coromandel Township, Wairara, Takuma, and Ngati. Port Charles, Matarangai, Fishanga, Hotwater Beach, and Parawi will also be impacted by destructive flooding despite the distance, with all beaches and waterfronts becoming lethal zones. Impact areas are being updated in real time via remaining networks. There is no time for coordinated evacuations. Residents along the western coastline must move immediately inland and upward. Coromandel Forest Park, State Highway 25 and Kataraki Summit are currently the safest accessible high points. Residents along the eastern coast must head inland and uphill immediately. Do not attempt to take vehicles down congested routes. Take only essential. Survival is the priority. Geologists warn of strong aftershocks continuing throughout the day, many potentially exceeding magnitude 8.0. Entering to affected coastlines is strictly forbidden until further notice and may result in certain death due to further waves or ground instability. Stay away from beaches, harbors, and river mouths. This concludes this emergency alert. Stay tuned to 90.3 FM or local civil defense frequencies for continued updates. Repeat, move to higher ground immediately. This message will repeat until further notice.
A magnitude 9.8 megathrust earthquake originating at a depth of 9.4 kilometers beneath the Pukekohe region has caused catastrophic geological displacement across the Auckland-Waikato fault network. The rupture propagated along four known fault lines: the Kerepei Fault, Wairoa North Fault, Drury Fault, and the South Auckland Volcanic Lineament, creating unprecedented surface ruptures and vertical displacement in excess of 200 meters in some locations. In addition to the primary quake, deep subduction-related slip has been detected extending beneath the Hauraki Plains, suggesting ongoing tectonic instability. Early modeling indicates that tsunami wavefronts generated by undersea uplift are now moving well beyond the Bay of Plenty and East Cape, with sea anomalies recorded as far south as Gisborne and as far north as the Cavalli Islands. Field reports and satellite data confirm that inland liquefaction has occurred in the Waikato Basin, severely compromising infrastructure and ground stability across much of the region.
Lava fountains are breaching the summit of Rangitoto Island, sending dense columns of ash thousands of meters into the atmosphere as pyroclastic surges race across the Waitemata Harbour. Lake Puke has erupted violently, ejecting superheated steam and igniting fires across the north shore. The Oraki Basin is undergoing continuous explosive eruptions, with shockwaves reported as far as Howick and Avondale. Emergency services have completely withdrawn from central Auckland due to the advancing pyroclastic.
Regional broadcasting systems have been interrupted. This is a volcanic hazard broadcast issued for the Waikato and Auckland regions. Extreme volcanic activity is now occurring across multiple vents of the Auckland volcanic field following earlier events of the megaquake, which has completely decimated most of the greater Auckland and Waikato regions. Eruptions are confirmed at Rangitoto Island, Oraki Basin, Mount Eden, and Mount Mungiri. Submarine volcanic activity is underway within both the Manukau Harbour and the Hauraki Gulf, with steam plumes rising from the water surface and significant tremors continuing. A further 20 other volcanic zones, many previously thought to have been extinct or dormant, are now exhibiting full-scale eruptive behaviour. Violent explosions have been recorded across the central Auckland region, and additional eruptions are expected imminently. Pyroclastic flows from Rangitoto and Oraki Basin have already consumed areas along the eastern coastline, and flows from Mount Eden and surrounding cones are covering much of the already devastated central Auckland Isthmus. The region is blanketed in thick black ash, with fall rates exceeding 10 centimeters per hour in some areas. The Waitakere ranges have begun to collapse under the weight of ash and debris, while scorched drift zones continue to emit superheated gases. Visibility is near zero, and the air is not safe to breathe without protection. If there are any remaining survivors located within the greater Auckland area, you must take shelter below ground immediately. Use any available underground infrastructure, including car parks, basements, or stormwater tunnels. If underground access is unavailable, shelter indoors away from windows and seal all doors. Bring non-perishable food, water, and respiratory protection, and remain sheltered until further notice. Travel is currently impossible due to structural destruction and collapsing terrain. New volcanic flows from beneath the Manukau Harbour are moving toward the Manukau Heads, Waitakere Ranges, Kingseat, and Papakura. Simultaneously, pyroclastic clouds from Hauraki Gulf eruptions are approaching Great Barrier Island, Little Barrier Island, Waiheke Island, and the upper North Shore with temperatures exceeding 700 degrees Celsius. These flows will engulf all terrain in their path. Evacuation from these zones is no longer viable. This concludes this emergency alert broadcast. All residents
This is an emergency alert issued by Civil Defence Wellington. A catastrophic magnitude 9.9 earthquake is actively occurring, with its epicenter located near the Wairarapa region. The quake began at 2:58 p.m. New Zealand Standard Time and continues to generate violent shaking across Wellington, Lower Hutt, and surrounding areas. Residents are urged to take immediate shelter under sturdy furniture or move to open spaces away from buildings. Multiple fault lines, including the Wellington Fault, Aheriu Fault, Aotea Fault, and Moonshine Fault, have ruptured in sequence. Reports confirm extensive surface deformation across central Wellington and Lower Hutt, with massive ravines and fissures opening throughout the region. Entire sections of Lambton Quay, Courtney Place, and Jackson Street in Petone have collapsed into chasms, leaving widespread devastation and trapping thousands. Tsunami waves exceeding 80 meters in height are inundating coastal areas of Wellington Harbour. The Miramar Peninsula has been completely submerged, with waves reaching as far inland as Eastbourne, Petone, and Lower Hutt. Residents along coastal regions are advised to evacuate immediately to higher ground. Do not return home until further notice. Ground uplift has reached unprecedented levels, with land rising by over 150 meters in some areas. Entire city blocks in Thorndon and Kilbirnie have been swallowed by gaping rifts or elevated into towering cliffs. Suburbs such as Nini and Taita are experiencing catastrophic structural collapses due to tectonic shifts. Reports indicate that a new fault line is actively forming, stretching from Offy Bay in Wellington to Nini and Lower Hutt along the Wellington Fault Trace. This fault is widening rapidly and causing additional destruction across the region. Residents near this zone must evacuate.
As of the 28th of May, 2028, New Zealand has experienced an unprecedented seismic catastrophe, with 20 earthquakes exceeding magnitude 8.5 recorded across the country as the events of a predicted geological event begin to take place. The largest quake struck Auckland and the Masterton-Wellington region, with cascading seismic activity triggering chain fault ruptures across both islands. Death toll estimates have surpassed 1.2 million, with millions more displaced, injured, or unaccounted for. The most severely impacted cities include Auckland, Wellington, Hamilton, Napier, Gisborne, and Tauranga. Entire infrastructure networks have collapsed in affected regions, with major national highways, airports, and ports rendered non-operational. A total of 13 high-magnitude earthquakes have struck across the North Island since 10:30 a.m. activating major fault lines including the Northland, Kerepeu, Wellington, Ohio, Aotea, and Reparoa faults. Over 40 major surface ruptures have split the island, the most severe cutting the lower North Island east coast off entirely from the mainland. Auckland and Wellington have suffered geological devastation with city-wide collapse, new ravines, and complete ground uplift in some areas. Entire districts have lost communication, including the entirety of Wairarapa, Gisborne, and central Auckland. Estimated casualties across the North Island exceed 950,000. The South Island has recorded 7 earthquakes above magnitude 8.5, with epicenters mainly around Nelson, Kaikoura, and the Marlborough Sounds. Activated fault lines include the Alpine, Aotearoa, Clarence, and Wairau faults. Large rift zones have formed in the northern and western regions, with land deformation visible as far south as Christchurch. Contact has been lost with multiple towns including Blenheim, Hammer Springs, and Westport. Casualties are estimated at over 230,000 across the South Island, primarily concentrated in coastal and fault-adjacent communities. Tsunami waves reaching 50 to 80 metres in height have struck coastal regions of Northland, Auckland, Waikato, Bay of Plenty, and the Coromandel Peninsula. Floodwaters have surged up to 25 kilometres inland in low-lying areas. Entire communities such as Thames, Sangamata, and Pokeno have been annihilated by tsunami surges. Waiheke Island, Tauranga, and Whitianga remain partially submerged. Naval and aerial reconnaissance confirm that the east coast is unrecognisable, with most infrastructure drowned or swept away. As of 6 p.m., 162 emergency alert system broadcasts have been issued nationwide via television, radio, and mobile networks. Over 45 local emergency management stations have ceased broadcasting due to infrastructure collapse or staff casualties. Coordination between civil defence, the NZDF, and remaining communication hubs continues with extreme difficulty. All national emergency services are operating under survival protocols. International aid requests have been issued to Australia, the United States, and Pacific allies. New Zealand is facing an extinction-level national disaster. The entire North Island is geologically destabilised, with the South Island suffering severe infrastructural and seismic damage. Relief operations are expected to be limited for at least 48 to 72 hours due to destroyed logistics and continued volcanic and seismic activity. Citizens in remaining stable zones are advised to shelter in place, preserve resources, and avoid coastlines or fault-ruptured regions. It is expected, however, that conditions will deteriorate rapidly throughout the week until the landmass of Zealandia will form. Further updates will be issued as long as national communication systems remain online.
We've just received the latest situation reports from Northland and Waikato. Total infrastructural failure. The numbers are catastrophic. We are looking at over 1 million dead or missing in the North Island alone.
We were tracking this activity for weeks, and yet warnings were restricted to classified channels and private advisories. It's hard not to ask, did we wait too long?
There were protocols. Cabinet signed off on a restricted release policy to avoid panic and economic disruption. But clearly, it backfired. Entire urban populations had no chance to escape.
We had predictive models suggesting a major tectonic shift under Auckland at least 4 days ago. Rangitoto's magma chamber readings spiked 400%. We withheld that data from the public.
It wasn't just Rangitoto. Our internal reports from GNS Science flagged a fault cascade scenario stretching from Auckland down to Wairarapa. We sat on it, thinking we had time.
The Auckland volcanic field was lighting up like a grid under thermal satellites. Subsurface deformation reports were classified. Civilian scientists were stonewalled. That delay cost lives.
Now we are sitting on a fractured nation. There's no access to the east coast below Hawke's Bay, Wellington's gone, and Auckland. It's unrecognizable. We may have underestimated the moral cost of silence.
We need to reevaluate how we handle classified geological data going forward. Information asymmetry killed people. The science community will tear us apart when this comes out.
When this settles, and it will, the questions won't stop.
For now, we focus on salvage. The dead can't be helped, but the living still depend on what we do next.
This is a civil defense emergency broadcast which has been activated at 11:45 a.m. local time for all remaining residents of the Bay of Plenty. Due to catastrophic failures of national infrastructure from yesterday's seismic events and the escalating volcanic eruptions across the North Island, this broadcast may terminate without warning. Kia Matara remain vigilant. Communications are breaking down, but this is the last known active transmission for the region. At 10:58 a.m., Mount Tarawera erupted violently, followed by an explosive eruption within the Rotorua geothermal field at approximately 11:15 a.m. Mount Edgecumbe began erupting at 11:30 a.m. with significant pyroclastic flows and high-magnitude tremors. Ash columns are moving rapidly through the atmosphere, already reaching parts of the eastern Waikato and upper Rangitaki. This alert affects the Kootenay, Tauranga, Rotorua, Edgecumbe, Tebuki, Waihi, and surrounding rural areas. All eruptions have exceeded volcanic explosivity index level 4 and are increasing in scale. Pyroclastic surges are reported moving across the Rotorua Lakes district and into the Outer Bay of Plenty Basin. Rotorua's lake waters have begun boiling over and roads into the central geothermal zones are impassable. All remaining residents must take immediate shelter where possible. Do not attempt evacuation inland. Rotorua Township, Edgecumbe, Kauwero, Tokoroa, Whakarewarua, Mamaku, and Hamurana have sustained near total destruction. Rifts, craters, and geothermal collapses have consumed entire neighborhoods. Entire town blocks have been swallowed or erased by layers and pyroclastic waves. No official communication has been received from within these zones since 11:20 a.m. Further volcanic activity is imminent in Mount Maunganu, Mount Ngongotahā, Mare Island, White Island, the Hero Hero caldera, and additional sub-volcanic vents currently showing extreme geothermal pressure. Ashfall is expected to darken the skies over the entire region by 12:15 p.m. Expect total blackout conditions. All residents must remain indoors with masks or cloths over mouth and nose, and prepare for complete isolation. This broadcast will remain on air until further notice. God bless our people. God bless our Aotearoa.
Multiple volcanic systems across the region have erupted in the past 2 hours, including 2 newly confirmed eruptions at Mount Nongota and White Island.
The Okatina caldera, located east of Rotorua, has violently erupted at approximately 12 p.m. local time, triggering a catastrophic volcanic explosion across the central Bay of Plenty. Massive pyroclastic flows and lava torrents have surged outward from the crater, swallowing vast areas of terrain and destroying any remaining infrastructure in their path. Authorities have confirmed widespread devastation as the eruption compounds the chaos already unleashed by Mount Tarawera and Mount Edgecumbe earlier in the day. In an escalation of events, 7 additional volcanic vents across the Bay of Plenty have since erupted, including Mount Maunganui and White Island, both of which are now expelling pyroclastic clouds and active lava flows toward the coast. Civil defense is warning of total regional collapse as rescue operations are halted or destroyed and seismic instability continues to rise. Emergency management teams are urging any survivors to shelter in place or move inland, if possible, as further eruptions are expected in the coming hours.
Blackouts are ongoing across terrain, the radio, for QTA Coastal VHF, and Maritime Ops Auckland,
This is a civil defense emergency alert issued by Northland Radio Civil Defense in cooperation with NEMA, RNZ, and Fire and Emergency New Zealand, broadcasting on 675 AM, 101, 7 FM, and all active civil defense frequencies across Kaikohe, Bay of Islands, Kerikeri, Whangarei, and Kaichaia. At 3:10 PM New Zealand Standard Time, multiple volcanic eruptions and ultra-high magnitude seismic events are now occurring throughout the Kaikohe Bay of Islands volcanic field, with widespread infrastructure collapse reported across the region. At 3:03 PM, Te Ahuahu began erupting, producing sustained explosive activity reaching Veni 3, accompanied by large ash clouds and pyroclastic surges. Simultaneously, 3 additional volcanic vents have opened within the Bay of Islands region, with confirmed activity near Afiti, Haruru, and Michiwarohia Island. Pyroclastic flows generated from these vents are traveling at speeds exceeding 120 km per hour, and are expected to reach Kerikeri Township within minutes, or residents are ordered to evacuate south or shelter in hardened structures immediately. Further eruptions have now been confirmed from Kaikohe Hill, Pauerua, Terahi, and Maungageroto, all producing lava fountains and directional blasts with significant localized fallout. Lava flows are advancing rapidly toward population centers including Kaikohe, Koakoa, Russell, Waitangi, Opua, and Kio, with substantial damage already reported across transport and power networks. Ashfall in these areas is forecast to reach up to 30 centimeters within the next 4 hours, further obstructing visibility and contaminating water sources. While Auckland's volcanic systems remain active following earlier eruptions, new seismic data suggests pressure build-up across northern fault lines extending through Warkworth and Mangawhai, increasing risk of additional eruptions further south. Evacuation hubs are now operational in Dargaville, Whangarei, and Kaichaia, where food, water, and first aid are being administered by local emergency personnel. UN Maritime Task Group Pacific and Royal Australian Navy humanitarian forces are en route, expected to arrive within 15 hours, with their lift and sea-based evacuation capacity prioritised for vulnerable individuals. Multiple reports confirm extensive ground uplift offshore, with new ridgelines forming due to underwater volcanic deformation along the Kaikohe Bay of Islands field. This activity is generating steam explosions and ash plumes offshore, while pyroclastic surges are expected to expand inland over a 70-85 km radius, depending on prevailing winds and topography. Ash columns from Te Ahuahu and Pauerua have reached 14,000 meters, causing complete aviation blackout across Northland airspace. For immediate safety, residents must avoid all coastal roads and low-lying valleys, and proceed using inland highways toward evacuation zones listed. Evacuate only if road conditions are passable, otherwise shelter in place with a wet cloth, high filtration mask, or improvised air sealant. This is Northland Civil Defense. We are experiencing a major seismic event, reports of a magnitude 9.7.
Catastrophic geological activity is tearing through Northland this afternoon, with a magnitude 9.5 earthquake striking just before 3:10 p.m., following a wave of volcanic eruptions across the Kaikohe Bay of Islands volcanic field. The city of Whangarei has suffered widespread destruction, with massive ground fissures, collapsed infrastructure, and confirmed volcanic vents opening near the city center. Civil defense confirms that over 34% of Northland is now covered in pyroclastic flows, lava, or ash, rendering vast areas uninhabitable. Major eruptions have been confirmed at Te Ahuahu, Kaikohe Hill, and Puerua, with additional vents now spewing lava across Russell, Kawakawa, and Opua. Pyroclastic clouds have blanketed large swathes of farmland, highways, and townships, and evacuation efforts are being overwhelmed by blocked roads and continued tremors. Authorities are urging all remaining residents to head to southern evacuation hubs if possible, though access is rapidly deteriorating as seismic and volcanic activity escalates.
An unprecedented wave of volcanic
and seismic events have occurred across the North Island. The most catastrophic activity has occurred in the Bay of Plenty and Northland, with widespread eruptions and earthquakes reported throughout both regions. Additional volcanic events have been confirmed in the lower Wairarapa, Manawatu, Waikato, and Taranaki regions, many of which are producing VEI 2 to 3 level eruptions. Significant damage, ashfall, and displacement of civilian populations have been reported across much of the central and northern North Island. The Bay of Plenty has suffered the most violent eruptions recorded today, with 13 confirmed volcanic events including the catastrophic eruption of the Okataina caldera, which has completely destroyed all land within a 35 kilometers radius. Pyroclastic flows from this eruption have reached up to 70 kilometers from the caldera, decimating surrounding towns and coastline. Volcanic activity from Mare Island and White Island has triggered undersea ground uplift, creating 5 to 10 kilometers of new landmass and generating tsunami waves up to 20 meters high. These waves have inundated much of the Bay of Plenty's eastern and southern coastline. All communication systems in the region have ceased. Radio silence has persisted for over an hour. The Kaikohe Bay of Islands volcanic field has erupted explosively, with multiple confirmed eruptions reaching VEI 5 to 6. Major vents have opened at Te Ahuahu, Kaikohe Hill, and Poarua, with widespread pyroclastic flows covering northern towns. Earthquakes exceeding magnitude 9.5 have caused ground ruptures and rifts across the region, including the destruction of central Whangarei. At least 7 distinct eruption sites have been identified in the last 3 hours. The last known broadcast from Northland was received at 3:30 p.m. With no contact since, the region is now presumed unresponsive. Significant volcanic and seismic activity has been reported across central North Island, particularly in the Manawatu and Waikato regions. Volcanoes including Mount Ruapehu, Mount Tongariro, Mount Pahanga, Tahuna, and the Whakamaru caldera have erupted with VEI 4 to 5 intensity. Earthquakes between magnitude 7.0 and 8.3 have been recorded across the region, affecting infrastructure and disrupting evacuation efforts. Palmerston North and Hamilton have suffered extensive ashfall and damage, with communication sporadic. Ongoing tremors have prevented aerial and ground assessment of surrounding rural areas. Based on current modelling, the North Island will be uninhabitable within days, with infrastructure, transportation, and emergency response capacities now critically compromised. Estimated fatalities are projected to reach between 1.5 and 2 million, with many areas inaccessible and unaccounted for. Volcanic uplift and earthquake swarms have now been detected in parts of the South Island, including near Kaikoura and Westport.
I'm looking at the deformation data again. Every station from Auckland to Wellington is showing vertical uplift, some of them by meters. I've never seen anything like this.
Neither have I. The crust. It's moving. Horizontally, vertically, fracturing. Zealandia isn't just resurfacing, it's building itself.
That matches our field observations in Northland and the Bay. New land isn't forming in centuries, it's forming daily. Volcanic vents are linking up like synapses.
We got a subduction boundary rupture reading an hour ago off the East Cape. The whole plate might be slipping. We are seeing harmonic tremor patterns along the entire Taupo line.
Wait, Taupo? Already? Our models predicted its eruption not for at least several more weeks.
Not erupting yet, but it's waking. The caldera's breathing. The last gas samples showed elevated sulfur dioxide and carbon dioxide, more than any record we've ever had. I mean, given what's happened today and yesterday with all these eruptions, it's really no surprise. But what concerns me is that it's still building pressure. Whatever this eruption will be like, it will dwarf everything we've seen so far.
If Taupo goes, the pressure release alone could collapse the whole central plateau. The ash would stretch across half the hemisphere.
It's not just Taupo.
We are predicting the Norfolk Rise could rupture. Norfolk volcano might go at the same time. And if that aligns with Taupo's eruption and caldera collapse, that's tectonic scale restructuring.
You saying Zealandia emerges? Like, visibly? Parts of the Earth's mantle crust breaking the surface?
Exactly. Within days. Taupo's the keystone. When it blows, the whole system synchronizes. And when it does, pyroclastic flows could reach thousands of kilometers.
We've confirmed Ash has reached East Timor and parts of southern Sulawesi. That gives us 72 hours, max, before air travel across the Pacific becomes impossible. We need to start relocating now.
I've already signed off on emergency relocation orders for what's left of the South Island population. Dunedin and Invercargill are partially operational. We've managed to restore shortwave contact for about 18 minutes an hour.
I've received confirmation that the Defence Force is holding a line south of Oamaru. But morale is collapsing. These people need a place to go, not just hold out.
We've pre-cleared landing sites in Fiji, New Caledonia, and the Solomons. But be aware, we are also dealing with minor quakes there now. The whole plate is under strain.
We are losing time. Every hour, the ash is thickening. Visibility in Fjordland is already under 300 meters. The South Island isn't safe, it's just slower to collapse.
Australia has hardened facilities. We recommend moving key personnel and population groups to Western Australia bunkers within the next 18 hours. We can assist logistically, but the choice has to come from your side. We are activating Emergency Protocol Bravo. Fuel reserves are being redirected, and Navy convoys are en route to the lower Tasman. We are taking as many as we can. It's preservation.
Understand. Prioritize children, medical staff, civil engineers. If we can't save the North, at least we save what's needed to rebuild anywhere.
I've already sent orders for cultural preservation. Digital archives, national records, Taonga, all to be loaded onto outbound ships.
Once we seal the bunkers, no one gets in or out. You understand that. If this reaches our western coastlines, we go dark. Completely. Then we do what we must. Preserve the flame. Rebuild when the fire dies.
This is an emergency broadcast from Canterbury Regional Council in partnership with Radio New Zealand and Christchurch City Radio, transmitting live on all emergency frequencies and AM and FM bands across the South Island. A catastrophic magnitude 9.7 earthquake has just struck the Canterbury region, centred near Darfield, west of Christchurch, at approximately 1 p.m. local time. Seismic experts have confirmed that several major fault lines, including the Christchurch Fault, the Port Hills Fault, and the Ashley Fault Zone, have all ruptured simultaneously, along with a significant rupture along the Alpine Fault. This has caused extreme ground movement across the entire Canterbury Plains. Massive surface rifts have opened across urban and rural areas, with cracks reportedly extending eastward toward the coast, and as far north as Waipara. Some rifts have already cut through key infrastructure and roadways in central Christchurch. Widespread liquefaction has been reported throughout the city, particularly in the eastern suburbs and the central business district. Entire buildings are collapsing into sinkholes, with roads and bridges vanishing under rising silt and water pressure. Emergency crews are overwhelmed, and further ground destabilization is expected. Multiple fissures several hundred meters in length have opened across Cathedral Square and Latimer Square. Tsunami sirens are now active. Coastal sensors have detected wave heights exceeding 70 meters, impacting New Brighton, Sumner, and extending south toward Ashburton. Water has already pushed inland beyond 5 kilometers in some areas, and surges are ongoing. Evacuation is no longer possible in these zones. Seek vertical refuge, if at all possible. We are also receiving reports of severe ground uplift across western suburbs, including Avonhead, Papineau, and St Albans. Entire neighbourhoods have shifted upwards by as much as 3 metres, and Woolston and Ferrymead, similar vertical displacement has torn through housing zones. Off the eastern coastline, initial surveillance suggests the formation of new landmasses visible from parts of Mount Pleasant and Red Cliffs. Aftershocks are expected to continue as systems begin to
National, broadcasting across what remains of the Canterbury region. Pyroclastic flows from the Akuroa eruption are now racing across the obliterated ruins of Christchurch, engulfing what few structures still stand after the earlier quake. The landscape is almost unrecognizable, torn apart by rifts and uplifted slabs of land now being consumed by searing volcanic clouds. Debris from the eruption includes fragments of land over 500 meters wide, violently ejected and flung as far inland as Oxford, smashing into the foothills like meteor impacts. A series of aftershocks, some exceeding magnitude 9, continue to devastate the Canterbury Plains and stretch deep into Otago. Massive cracks have widened across farmland, swallowing roads, rivers, and entire settlements. The ash cloud above Banks Peninsula has risen beyond 35,000 meters, blanketing the region and cutting visibility to zero. Most of Littleton, Akuroa, and every trace of central Christchurch are confirmed gone, vaporized or buried beneath ash, fire, and stone. New landmasses are now visibly rising off the coast of Christchurch and Banks Peninsula, emerging from the ocean as the pyroclastic flows surge out to sea. These flows are generating tsunami waves of unimaginable scale, now converging on what remains of the East and South Island. This broadcast is coming to you from our RNZ relay station in Kaiapoi. We don't have much time left. My name is Mark. After 22 years of bringing you news, weather, and voices from across the country, I thank you. This is RNZ. Signing.
This is News Hub at 2 p.m., broadcasting live from Dunedin as the last coordinated evacuation efforts from the lower South Island come to a close. Just over 2,400 individuals were airlifted or ferried out from Otago and Southland overnight, with final evacuation vessels departing Port Chalmers and Bluff within the hour. Officials say worsening seismic conditions and unpredictable atmospheric fallout from the Akuroa eruption have rendered further extractions too dangerous to attempt. This is now being described as the final phase of civilian relocation in the region. Military and emergency assets are being redeployed further west, with contact lost with areas east of Oamaru following sudden tremor activity. There are unconfirmed reports of new volcanic activity near the Wairikadebra volcanic field, a dormant complex not known to have erupted in recent history. We are receiving seismic data indicating a possible level 4 or higher eruption. Wait, we're getting something now. There's a large plume.
Over the past several days, seismic and volcanic events across New Zealand have reached unprecedented levels. Multiple earthquakes have struck with magnitudes exceeding 9.0 on the Richter scale in Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, Northland, and Otago. 3 confirmed supervolcanic eruptions have occurred from the Okataina caldera, Akuroa Peninsula, and the Debra volcanic field in Dunedin. Additionally, 83 other recorded eruptions have been logged across the islands and surrounding South Pacific and Tasman Sea regions. These events indicate the total destabilization of the Zealandia tectonic plate. The Kermadec Trench, running northeast of New Zealand, is showing simultaneous activity across 15-plus submarine volcanoes. Mare Island and White Island have already breached sea level, forming new volcanic landmasses within the past 24 hours. Subsurface sonar imaging indicates a massive buildup of pressure across the trench, with signs of synchronized eruption patterns. VEI 5 to VEI 6 plus level eruptions are expected imminently from these systems. The resulting uplift is predicted to merge with existing Zealandia formations, contributing to a unified emergent landmass. 4 major submarine volcanoes within the Tasman Sea are now active, including the Waitakere Piha volcanic complex and the emerging Norfolk Island volcano. 2 additional submarine structures, one 90 kilometers southwest of Lord Howe Island and another near the Coral Sea, are showing rapid magma chamber inflation. These systems are distinct from the Kermadec Rift and are exhibiting energy signatures close to VEI 7. Massive crustal deformation is already forming underwater ridges which will soon breach the surface. The ash column projections suggest serious aviation and maritime disruption across eastern Australia. The Norfolk Island volcano is on the verge of a catastrophic eruption. Seismic readings suggest a VEI 6 plus event capable of launching landmasses hundreds of meters into the air and forming an island several dozen kilometers wide. If combined with other eruptive forces from the Kermadec and Tasman zones, the energy release will affect atmospheric circulation globally. Potential impacts include tsunami waves projected at 50 to 80 meters along eastern Australia, severe seismic shockwaves across New South Wales and Queensland, communications blackout in the South Pacific, risk of volcanic ash disabling shelters and contaminating water systems. Evacuation orders have been issued for all low-lying coastal regions across southern Australia, Victoria, New South Wales, and Tasmania. Western Australia is now the primary safe zone, with deep shielded bunkers being activated to withstand ashfall that may persist for decades. Experts forecast a full Zealandia continental formation within the next 48 to 72 hours. Atmospheric modelling suggests sustained volcanic winter conditions are imminent. All military and civil response units are now operating under Phase Red Continuity Protocol. Australia is poised to bear the most severe effects from the sudden emergence of the Zealandia continent. Tsunami activity, supervolcanic ash clouds, and large-scale earthquakes are expected to ripple across the entire South Pacific and Indian Ocean basins. Shelters and contingency plans may not suffice for the full extent of devastation predicted. Humanitarian, governmental, and international response operations are being overwhelmed. This is an extinction-level geophysical transformation unseen in recorded history.
This is an official broadcast from the Australian National Emergency Alert System, activated under Category Red, Catastrophic Geological Event. At approximately 2:30 p.m. local time, the Taupo caldera in central New Zealand has erupted in a very A-class supervolcanic explosion, the most powerful eruption in recorded human history. The Taupo eruption released an estimated 100 to 250 megatons of explosive force, obliterating everything within a 100-kilometer radius of the caldera in under 90 seconds. The ash plume has already exceeded 55,000 meters in altitude, with global ash dispersion now confirmed. Uplift and fragmentation of land across the North Island is visible by satellite, with entire coastal sectors breaking apart and forming new land masses both east into the South Pacific and west into the Tasman Sea. All towns and cities within a 100-kilometer blast zone, including Taco, Rotorua, and much of Waikato, no longer exist. Lava ejecta and rock debris have been launched into both the Tasman and South Pacific Oceans, with some fragments measuring up to 1.2 kilometers in diameter, traveling at speeds over 500 kilometers per hour. Shockwaves have been recorded in Sydney, Hobart, Melbourne, and inland areas as far as Dubbo, where windows have shattered and ground tremors continue. Initial readings suggest the energy released is approaching the scale of the Toba eruption, which triggered a global volcanic winter 74,000 years ago. New volcanic ridgelines forming along the submerged Zealandia continent are producing tsunami waves ranging from 80 to 120 meters in height. Modeling forecasts estimate Tasmania's east coast will be impacted within 2 hours, followed by the coastlines of Victoria, New South Wales, and southern Queensland. The South Australian Gulfs and coastal Adelaide may be affected within 3 to 4 hours, depending on underwater plate shifts and oceanic displacement. Do not approach coastal areas under any circumstances. Ashfall from the eruption has already reached parts of Victoria and Tasmania, and will intensify across eastern Australia in the next 4 to 6 hours. Roof collapse is likely under accumulating ash exceeding 20 centimeters, especially for lightweight and flat-roofed structures. Close and seal all windows, place wet towels under doors, and wear P2R95 masks to prevent suffocation. Cover electronic equipment and food stores. Ash is corrosive and highly damaging. All residents in eastern and southern coastal states, New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, South Australia, Tasmania, and the Australian Capital Territory, are now under martial law, effective immediately. Full-scale military evacuation is being coordinated with staging hubs in Western Australia, where hardened shelters are operational. If you are within 40 kilometers of any coastline, evacuate now or move to vertical shelter. You will not survive the next few hours without immediate action. Civilian movement is restricted outside official quarters. Enforcement is active and uncompromising. This is your final warning. Australia will face an unprecedented wave of destruction, and the window for escape is rapidly closing. Save only what is essential. Protect your families. May God watch over us all.
Sending
At approximately 2:30 p.m. New Zealand Standard Time, just minutes ago, the Taupo caldera in central Aotearoa, New Zealand has erupted with apocalyptic force. The explosion, now confirmed as a VEI-8 event, has triggered seismic alarms across the globe, with the British Geological Survey noting reverberations in instruments as far as Iceland and West Africa. Scientists are already calling this the single most violent eruption since the dawn of civilization. Satellite images show a towering ash column punching through the stratosphere and a rapidly expanding thermal anomaly over the North Island. Experts warn that the global climate will likely shift within weeks, with the Northern Hemisphere facing a potential volcanic winter. The British government is now monitoring atmospheric fallout patterns, with emergency COBRA meetings expected within the hour.
This is an automated localized radio broadcast issued for the entirety of Norfolk Island and surrounding maritime zones. At approximately 4:16 p.m. local time, the undersea volcanic structure located 27 kilometers southeast of Norfolk Island has erupted with extreme force. The eruption has been preliminarily classified between VI7 and VI8, indicating an event of devastating and hemispheric consequence. The eruption has triggered a complete structural collapse of the seafloor in the region, resulting in the formation of over 50 to 100 kilometers of new landmass within the first 20 minutes. Pyroclastic flows and lava surges have reached as far as Phillip Island and are rapidly expanding into the Coral Sea. A series of violent quakes and lifting events have been recorded across the Norfolk Ridge, with land deformation already visible from satellite telemetry. Multiple tsunami wavefronts have been generated and are now radiating in all directions from the impact zone, including toward New Caledonia, Lord Howe Island, and the eastern Australian coast. These waves are estimated to range between 40 to 90 meters in height and are projected to make landfall on some coastal zones within 90 minutes. Maritime communication buoys have already gone dark, indicating widespread infrastructure loss in the Norfolk region. Airborne ash clouds from the eruption have begun climbing into the stratosphere, disrupting all flight corridors across the South Pacific region. All civil aviation routes in the Coral Sea sector are suspended indefinitely, and all maritime evacuation efforts are deemed non-viable. Civilian structures on Norfolk Island have sustained total collapse. No contact has been established since the initial eruption. This system will remain active and repeat at 10-minute intervals until terminated. If you are within any South Pacific or Eastern Australian coastal zone, you are advised to immediately evacuate to the highest ground possible or enter secure underground shelter if available. This may be the last transmission from the Norfolk emergency system. May those listening act swiftly and without hesitation.
Broadcast authorized by the South Pacific Forum Emergency Coordination Committee, in partnership with SPREP, GNS Science NZ, Geoscience Australia, and Pacific Disaster Centre. This message is being transmitted on HF frequencies 14.225 MHz and 7.055 MHz, shortwave bands, and relayed through Radio New Zealand Pacific, ABC Pacific, FM 89.3, and PINA television stations. This broadcast will be aired in several languages. You are listening to the English translation of this broadcast. Multiple undersea and island volcanoes across the South Pacific have simultaneously erupted, generating catastrophic geological and hydrological consequences. At this hour, volcanic eruptions have been confirmed at 7 distinct locations across the South Pacific, 2 along the northern and central Kermadec Trench, 1 near the Chatham Rise, 1 off the Lord Howe Rise, another west of New Caledonia, 1 in the Campbell Plateau, and 1 northeast of the Challenger Plateau. These eruptions follow the earlier VEI 7 event near Norfolk Island and the VEI 8 eruption of the Taupo caldera in New Zealand and appear to be part of a broader geotectonic upheaval. Islands in close proximity, including Ridle Island, LS Booth Rock, Chatham Island, and parts of Loyalty Islands, have issued full evacuation orders. Tsunami generation has been confirmed from all 7 eruption sites, with lava fronts measuring 35 to 95 meters in height depending on distance and location. Impact is expected imminently in Tonga, Samoa, Niue, Wallis and Futuna, Vanuatu, the Cook Islands, and Tuvalu, with surges already reaching parts of New Caledonia and the southern Lau group of Fiji. Pyroclastic surges, ash clouds, and sea heater gas plumes are also spreading across the region, posing severe inhalation and navigational hazards. New land masses are emerging rapidly at multiple epicenters, with tectonic uplift and collapse triggering earthquakes above magnitude 9.3 on the Kermadec fault line. Emergency authorities advise that only high-altitude islands such as Rarotonga, Espiritu Santo, and Mork retain relative safety for temporary shelter based on their location and proximity. Citizens are advised to relocate inland and uphill where possible, avoid low-lying atolls, and seal buildings against ash and debris. This concludes the emergency broadcast from the South Pacific Forum. Further updates will be transmitted every 30 minutes or as situations develop. May courage guide our people in these darkest hours. Godspeed to all in the Pacific.
This is an official emergency broadcast issued by the Australian government via the National Emergency Alert System, in coordination with the Bureau of Meteorology, the Department of Home Affairs, and the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. As of 5:15 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on the 1st of June 2028, catastrophic tsunami waves measuring between 50 to 100 meters in height had made landfall across the eastern seaboard of the Australian continent. This event is linked to the geological rise of the Zealandia continent and associated volcanic activity. Tsunami impact zones now include the metropolitan regions of Sydney, Brisbane, Gold Coast, Wollongong, Newcastle, Melbourne, Glen, Adelaide, Canberra, and the Sunshine Coast. The eastern coastlines of New South Wales and Queensland have experienced the most extensive devastation, with multiple suburbs submerged and infrastructure failures reported. Victoria, the Australian Capital Territory, and South Australia are also now facing partial inundation along their coastlines, with further impacts expected inland due to tsunami surges and SARS effects. Wave heights and impacted zones are confirmed at over 92 meters in parts of the Gold Coast, 85 meters in Sydney Harbour, and approximately 70 meters along the Adelaide coastline. Estimated arrival times following the main wave were under 10 minutes from initial seismic detection, allowing minimal response time. Tasmania is now confirmed to be submerged, with no remaining communication links. Those within Victoria, the Australian Capital Territory, and South Australia are directed to evacuate to higher altitudes, including the Blue Mountains, Mount Lofty Ranges, and the Great Dividing Range where survivability may be statistically higher. Ashfall is now descending across all eastern states and territories, with concentrations forecast to reach 8 to 20 centimeters in Sydney, 12 to 30 in Brisbane, and up to 40 in inland Queensland. Canberra, Bendigo, Toowoomba, and Albury-Wodonga are expected to receive high-density ash coverage within the next 4 to 6 hours. Ash inhalation, crop contamination, and water system failures are anticipated to lead to severe agricultural disruption and long-term food insecurity across the eastern agricultural belt. The Zealandia continental landmass is continuing to rise from beneath the Tasman and South Pacific Oceans, expanding at a rate of several square kilometers per hour. Seismic instability is expected to produce new tsunami events over the following days and weeks. The government warns that additional VEI-level eruptions, plate shifts, and further mass casualties remain highly probable across coastal Australia. We repeat, this is not a drill. If you are receiving this transmission, immediately seek
This is an automated emergency alert issued on behalf of the New South Wales State Emergency Service and the Australian Government. At approximately 5:20 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time, a tsunami wave measuring an estimated 87 metres in height breached the outer heads of Sydney Harbour, with water levels rising at a rate of over 12 metres per minute in low-lying sectors. Pennant, Circular Quay, Barangaroo, and Millers Point are now confirmed to be experiencing full structural inundation, with debris fields observed moving at over 60 km per hour inland. Transport corridors including the Cahill Expressway, Western Distributor, and most ferry terminals have been submerged or destroyed. Multiple communication lines have failed, and emergency services have been overwhelmed in the CBD and inner west regions. All residents are urged to move to elevations exceeding 90 metres above sea level immediately. Locations such as Bellevue Hill, North Sydney Ridge, and the Waverley Cemetery Cliffs may offer temporary reprieve. Do not return for belongings.
This is a 9 News emergency report broadcasting live across Australia on Channel 9, 9 Now, and affiliated networks. In the last 2 hours, tsunami waves reaching heights between 70 and 100 meters have devastated vast stretches of the east and south Australian coastline. With catastrophic impact zones reported in the Gold Coast, Sydney, Wollongong, Melbourne, and Outer Adelaide. Preliminary estimates place the national death toll above 420,000, with over 1.3 million missing or unaccounted for across New South Wales, Queensland, and Victoria. Newly formed waves are now striking Moreton Bay and northern suburbs of Brisbane, while others are beginning to impact southern South Australia near Victor Harbour and Port Lincoln. Ashfall has blackened the skies over much of the eastern seaboard, complicating rescue efforts and grounding all aerial operations. Federal authorities have confirmed that all coastal infrastructure within 8 kilometers of the shoreline has been rendered uninhabitable or destroyed.
Over the past 80 days, the South Pacific region has endured an unprecedented geological upheaval. A total of 213 volcanic eruptions have been recorded across a 2,000-kilometre fault arc, decimating New Zealand, Norfolk Island, New Caledonia, and dozens of smaller islands. The formation of the previously submerged Zealandia continent has now reached near total completion, resulting in a planetary-scale volcanic winter and widespread displacement across Australasia and the wider Pacific. The Zealandia landmass now measures approximately 4.9 million square kilometres, officially making it Earth's 8th continent as recognised by the United Nations Geological Assembly on the 18th of July. Former territories such as New Zealand, New Caledonia, Norfolk Island, and the Chatham Islands are no longer visible as distinct landforms and have been fused into a jagged, black volcanic mass. Surface imagery shows lava plains, crater chains, and active magma rivers, with atmospheric thermal interference obstructing satellite readings at deeper structures. Biologists from Commonwealth Scientific and Industrial Research Organisation estimate that plant life will begin emerging between 2600 and 2700 AD, with initial colonisers likely being mosses, algae, lichens, and extremophilic fungi. Territorial claims over Zealandia remain in legal limbo, with Australia, France, New Caledonia, and residual Pacific nations debating future governance, though no formal borders can be drawn until conditions are deemed habitable. Projections indicate any possible settlement or development will require fully subterranean living for at least 7 to 10 centuries. The global death toll is estimated to exceed 1.6 billion, primarily in coastal regions of Australia, Southeast Asia, and the South Pacific. Ashfall coverage now spans 83% of Earth's surface, reducing global temperatures by 6 to 9 degrees Celsius, and blocking over 70% of solar radiation in the southern hemisphere. Volcanic ash is expected to remain in the upper atmosphere for 22 to 33 years, with Australia, Indonesia, and large parts of China and India now operating from permanent underground settlements. As of the 20th of August, volcanic activity remains ongoing, with 17 continuous eruptions recorded in the Zealandia region and low-level seismic anomalies indicating further subterranean unrest. The Kermadec Ridge, Campbell Plateau, and the Lord Howe Rise remain particularly volatile. The Australian Seismological Network estimates that residual volcanic activity may persist for up to 150 additional years, primarily in deep-sea vents and tectonic junctions surrounding Zealandia. The complete geological annihilation of New Zealand and over 45% of mainland Australia marks the end of an era in the southern hemisphere. Humanity now faces a harsh volcanic winter, a collapsed climate cycle, and the challenge of rebuilding from subterranean refuge. Zealandia's birth reshapes not just geography but global civilization, ushering in a new dark age beneath the ash-blackened sky, the likes of which not seen since Toba.